Hi everyone, you are Reddit exposed there, enjoy watching.
We met on the landing in Sunnyside, Queens. At the height of the COVID, the elevator in the house broke down, and we both dragged Dags upstairs, me with cheap pasta, she with a case of mineral water. I held the door open for her, she elbowed the button on the railing, and we exchanged that New York thank you where you can also hear holding on. A day later, I saw her in the queue at Key Food, and she waved her hand. Are you from 4B? Yes. Are you from 5C? And that's how it started. Her name was Nora. She worked as a coordinator for a non-profit organization in Jackson Heights. She helped immigrants with documents and tenants with letters to landlords. I was a product designer at a startup in Long Island City, drawing interfaces for logistics, living in the eternal deadline postponed to yesterday. We started dating, as we do now, text messages with links to time slots in parks, takeaway coffee, to tests per week. By the summer of 2021, we already knew the map of the area like the palm of our hand. Who pours a normal cold coffee on Queens Boulevard, where they give out the N95 in the church basement? Which exit to 74th? Roosevelt will not make you wander through the corridors. At the 7, we came up with a game, guessing who would be the first to hear stand clear of the closing doors, please, and each time we laughed, as if there was something new in the words. We rented a room with a view of the fire escape. The radiator was not whistling according to schedule, and the air conditioner was kept on its word of honor and to screws. On Saturdays, laundry is done around the clock on Greenpoint Avenue, tap here by Omni, to dryers instead of one, because towels always stay a little damp. In the morning, bagels at the Jordanian on the corner. In the evening, soups from the sets, which we swore with both hands not to be carried on anymore, but we were. The cracks came not from scandals, but from charts. Nora took extra shifts, letters, a hotline, meetings with residents in the evenings. I'm a late-night caller with the West Coast. We increasingly postponed our general plans until a quiet week, but there are no quiet weeks in New York. I started bringing pizza for later, and she fell asleep with her laptop open to the Dear Landlord email template. At one point, we only talked in notes on the refrigerator. You don't need to fix the switch in the hallway. It's not a wire. It's a ghost. Buy sand for the cat. The door slams. Lubricate the button. In the spring, Nora received a letter, a one-year internship in San Francisco, an organization she had long admired. Scholarship, mentoring, visas are a complete package. I was as happy as I could be. And at night I scrolled through 100 options. Quit my job and go. Fly back and forth. Let's get over it. In the morning she said, I'll go. I'm not asking you to wait. If you want, I'll see you later. I nodded. We are adults. Adults have suitcases on wheels. We said goodbye, LaGuardia, Terminal B, on the Q70 bus from Jackson Heights. In the lounge at the Southwest counter, she kept repeating that it wasn't forever, and that the city is just a backdrop. I held her suitcase and thought that the background sometimes pulls the plot more than the characters. We hugged like people who knew each other in all moods, and I drove home along the 7. Looking out the window at the identical brick houses. For the first few months, I did what everyone does, rearranged the table, twisted the curtains, threw out the broken humidifier, which we definitely fix. I made an appointment with a therapist at Elmhurst on a sliding scale. Once every 2 weeks, saying out loud that everything is fine is not a conversation. I hung a hook by the door for keys only so as not to get mad at the changes that were not necessary. The downstairs neighbor asked for help with the rental assistance program application. I copied Nora's template, inserted the data, and we sent it. She handed me the potato pies and said, thank you. For the first time in weeks, the apartment began to smell of something other than cat food and coffee. Nora rarely wrote. Photos of the view from the slope to the bay, notes about how everything is slower on the Muni, but drivers greet more often, and how everyone there wears jackets when it's plus 18. I replied the same way. A picture of Queens in the evening, wet asphalt, light in the windows, a cat on the windowsill. We didn't ask questions that we weren't ready to hear the truth about. Sometime in the winter, I returned to the things I loved before we. Basketball on the school playground on Sundays, silly trips outside Michael's, and attempts to bake banana bread. It turned out to be so-so, but the neighbors ate it. I was given a boring but stable project at work, and for the first time in a long time, I completed a sprint without night terrors. On the 74th, I learned how to go out the right door so as not to stand at the escalator. It's a small thing, but it feels like life has stopped confusing instructions. In the spring, Nora flew in for a couple of days to close the storage and pick up a couple of boxes. We met at the Tea and Sympathy in the West Village. She loved their shepherd's pie, even though it was always too hot. We sat down as exes who no longer need to explain the reasons. She told about the case with the residents in Auckland, about a colleague who does everything for yesterday and apologizes with a smile, about the sea, which takes the nose out of my head. I told him about the therapist, about the playground with soft shields, where the ball does not fly away on the row, about the neighbors' chat, where we finally are. They knocked out the lamp upon the sensor in the entrance. "I'm proud of you," she said. I smiled. "And I'm with you." We didn't say, "Let's try again." Not because they didn't feel it, but simply because every attempt has a price. She has a new city and people. I have a rhythm that has stopped breaking. We went outside. It started raining like that New York grit, and I caught myself thinking, I don't need to beat this scene. I need to walk it on the green. In the summer, I started helping out at the clinic on Wednesdays. You sit in the school cafeteria, pour water, print out forms, explain where to write the date in a letter to the landlord. Sometimes people come with stories that make yours look like wallpaper. Sometimes no one comes, and we discuss where the new tortilla has opened. I return home by the 7, transfer to the bus, and I like this simplest route, just enough steps for the head to catch up with the body. Sometimes I still saw Nora in the feed. Her team hung a banner, "Slow down. We live here at the intersection where they like to step on the gas." I liked it and closed the app. One day she sent a photo of a note on our stairs. "Thanks for the lamp on the sensor." It wasn't scary anymore. I knew who wrote it, a neighbor with heavy bags. I answered Nora's heart, and in the evening, I took a normal string bag hook to a neighbor. In the fall, new tenants moved into our building, a young teacher and a delivery guy. They were always confusing garbage days. I printed out a small calendar, black tank, Tuesday, blue tank, Friday, and hung it by the elevator. A week later, the printout was in every entrance on our street. Judging by the font, someone had translated it into Google Docs and distributed it further. I was walking home with a bag of oranges, and for the first time in a long time I thought, I managed to live without a big story. Just keep the little things well. The finale didn't come as an epigraph. It happened on an absolutely weekday evening. The laundry on the corner, the nose of washing machines, the 24 o'clock scoreboard, a woman in a nearby car swearing at coins that are stuck. I gave her my quarters, and she tried to transfer $5 via Venmo, but the connection hung up. "Later." "Don't," I said. She nodded, wrote on a piece of paper, "Thank you for B," and put it to the receipt. I grinned, because in 2 hours the wind would blow a piece of paper, and in a week she would write to the house chat, "Thank you to the laundryman." And that's enough. At home, I cooked rice with vegetables, set a timer on the stove, and sat by the window. A light sensor clicked softly in the hallway. The cat jumped onto the windowsill and curled up like a snail. I took out my phone not to wait for a message, but to write a reminder. Water the plant on Thursday and call mom on Sunday. I realized that this is my adult luxury, to have a life that does not require constant proof. Sometimes it seems to me that Nora and New York taught me the same thing. The city doesn't change from your dramas, it changes from the fact that you fixed the button, turned on the night light, knocked out a normal trash can at the entrance, learned how to get out of the right door on 74th so as not to push. And relationships, too. We did what we could and let go, not when it was empty, but when it was smooth. I turned off the overhead light for the night, left the small one in the hallway, and said aloud, almost in a whisper, to myself, "I'm here. That's enough. There will be a bagel in the morning, a bus to work, and, most likely, another thank you in the chat. And that's really enough." In winter, our heating went according to the Mars schedule again. Then he roasts, then he is silent. On one of these evenings, the elevator got stuck between the second and third, and a neighbor courier from a new pair brought up 5 boxes on foot. The two of us took them off our shoulders, and he grinned. New York is cardio. The next day, I printed out the "where to complain if it's cold, to hot" sign from Google Docs -311 HPD, screenshot of the sample form. I hung it up at the elevator, on the bulletin board, and threw it into the chat at home. It's funny, but after a week there was less swearing in the entrance. It became clear what to poach. On Wednesdays, I still help out in the clinic at the school cafeteria. One day, a woman came with her 5th grader son and a package of documents. The landlord stopped responding. Leaks, mold. I recognized the form. It's the same bureau template, only with someone else's hand. We added dates, photos, and a call log. Debo kept twirling my keychain with a mini flashlight, and I let him shine it on the copier. I work with the light, he said seriously. In the evening, I found myself smiling into an empty Q32 bus. Nora sometimes pops up with notifications. I sent a photo of the intersection in Auckland, the new zebra, and their banner slowed down. We live here. We won, she wrote. I sent back a snapshot of the Unisphere in Flushing Meadows and a single dot. The meaning is clear without the text. In the laundry room on Greenpoint Avenue, the old machine again ate cones from a woman in a down jacket. I left a plastic cup and a small laminated card next to it. If you don't have enough, take it. If there is anything superfluous, leave it. I didn't sign anyone. 2 weeks later, the cup is already chewed by life, but it is not empty. Someone stapled a coin roll with a blue rubber band. The small economy of trust started working without an author, and something very right clicked inside. In March, the therapist suggested switching to the once-a-month format. I twitched out of habit, in case I crumble between meetings. But it didn't crumble. We talked about boring things, how I stopped reading my work mail after 8. After telling my boss that tasks without priorities are not everything is important, but nothing is important. I caught myself stopping taking my phone to the bathroom with me. Stupidity, but it turned out that warm water dampens the alarm better than the recommendations from the tape. At the clinic, I met Talia. She leads the Spanish part of the reception, thin, fast, wearing sneakers that seem to be for running, but clearly live in queues. We went to Roosevelt Avenue several times after the shift. She went to E. I went to 7. We agreed to make a bilingual cheat sheet on letters to landlords on one page, without legal flourishes. I sat down in the evening and sketched out a layout, a large headline, a photo checklist, what to write in the subject of the letter, where to specify the repair period. They were typing in the copy center, taking out stacks, and for the first time a man came up to me and said, "Thank you for the normal letters. It's readable." In Queens, it's a compliment. In April, a neighbor teacher called out to me at the mailboxes, "Do you want to mess up a normal parcel shelf on a clean-up day?" The courier throws everything on the floor. The cat is sleeping on the Amazon from below. I took out a tape measure. We measured the niche, ordered racks and plywood from Home Depot. On Sunday, they assembled the apartment numbers in an hour, screwed on the tags and hung up cheap bicycle locks. Whoever wants, brings his own. In the chat at home every other day, there is a thank you with 3 emoticons and a photo where someone else's cat sits resentfully next to the parcel, not on it. Funny and warm. In May, Talia dragged me to Queens Night Market. Flushing Meadows, smells of fried dough, mango with chili, laughter everywhere. We stood under the Unisphere, watched the children race in circles, and discussed why people are more willing to sign letters if there is a paper clip next to them rather than a stapler. Because it can be fixed, she said. It's a simple thought, but it nailed me. Leaving the opportunity to correct is about everything. About patterns, about conversations, about people. I wrote in my notes, a paper clip is better than a stapler. Nora and I crossed paths again by chance on Penn 34th. She was in town for a couple of days, a conference. They saw each other through the crowd of backpacks, came up, and laughed out of awkwardness. 5 minutes about the weather, about the coffee, about the fact that she now has a bicycle with a basket in San Francisco. Without a helmet, they look at you like a criminal. I have a hook by the door and a shelf for parcels. At one point, she said, "I'm glad you're doing well." And I was choosing the right word. Exactly, I prompted. She nodded. We hugged quickly and correctly. Not a single internal alarm went off. I went down to eat, catching myself that there was no emptiness or fireworks in my chest, but such a simple on the spot. In the summer, I finally finished what I had been putting off for a year. I persuaded the superintendent to put a spring door closer on the front door so that it wouldn't slam at night. The spring cost like 3 bagels, but the nose went away, and the neighbor from the third brought cookies for silence. In the evening, sitting by the window, I suddenly realized that my heroism was not letters to the mayor's office or battles at meetings, but precisely these micro-movements: a door closer, a lamp on a sensor, a shelf, a card with a paper clip. And it made me feel proud, or something. Without a banner and without applause. The work stabilized so much that I started coming home before dark and cooking a normal dinner a couple of times a week. Once a month, a Sunday table for 2 or 3 friends. Soup, pasta, salad from everything that hasn't died in the refrigerator drawer. A cat is walking around the kitchen, Daisel in a plastic pot is on the windowsill, and a lamp with warm light is above the table. Sometimes Talia comes in, brings salsita in a small jar, taps on the glass with a spoon, tells how one grandmother from Woodside learned to say no comment on the phone to the landlord, who calls at 10 at night. At the beginning of autumn, we were covered by a downpour. Neighbors posted photos of wet stairs in the chat, and someone wrote, "I can't get out, it's slippery." I took out a jar of coarse salt from the cupboard, left over from the winter, and wrote on a piece of paper, "Salt it for B, take it." An hour later, the jar was empty. In the morning, someone returned it filled. On the lid appeared, "Thank you, 5C." I smiled. The addresses of the house still remember how to write thanks. And this fall, my teacher and I organized a neighborhood repair day, 3 hours on Saturday, without a scene, to replace the plastic numbers on the mailboxes, screw on the loose handrail, lubricate the lock on the roof where the laundry is dry. 5 people came. The courier brought a screwdriver, the woman from the third brought a box of cookies, the student from the first brought a WD-40 and a body of knowledge on how to use it. We broke up, and I realized that this was the best event of the year. Not a single speaker, not a single presentation, just hands and thank you. Sometimes people ask me, at work, at the clinic, "Do you have someone?" I answer, "There are people." It's true. Maybe someday there will be a someone. A couple of times, Talia and I went to the Queen's Museum and to a late-night movie in Astoria, chatted, laughed, and returned along our subway lines. I'm not forcing it. I'm not chasing the plot anymore. I fix the buttons and make sure the door has a door closer. Recently, a notice was posted in the house tenants meeting to discuss heating for winter and bedbugs. Thank you, New York. I went in for a minute and came out an hour and a half later. We have a list of specific cases and people who will take on what. I wrote down to make a bilingual memo on preparing for the cold, then to learn from the soup about the pads on the batteries. I was walking back up the stairs and thinking, it's strangely nice to be an adult in this sense. Not about I understand everything, but about I know who to write to and where the hexagon is. I came home, turned on the small light in the hallway. There was an envelope without a stamp on the parcel shelf, and a postcard inside. Thank you for the trash table and the door closer. 2A. I put a jar of salt next to it, checked the basil, and sent a photo of the new letter holder by the elevator to the chat. The phone beeped, and Talia dropped off a draft of our cheat sheet with an emoji paperclip in the title. Nora liked someone else's post about their zebra. The cat jumped onto the windowsill, as always, to its place. I put the kettle on, caught the right heat on the dimmer and said softly out loud, "Just to fix it, I'm here. Everything is smooth. And tomorrow will be clinic night, Sunday soup, maybe another door closer somewhere in Queens, and definitely, stand clear of the closing doors, please." And funnily enough, that's my story now. A week after that, I'm here. Everything is smooth. We were covered by a short but angry downpour. Photos surfaced in the chat at home. Water oozing down the wall in the laundry room, puddles on the stairs. Super responded with his usual working on it. I went down, took his huge umbrella from the courier as a shield, unlocked the pantry and pulled out an old shopping bag that someone had left for later. Together with the teacher, they collected water from the floor in half an hour, and the woman from the third brought towels and blue masking tape. They sealed the gap at the threshold. On the way back, I attached a laminated sheet at the entrance. Before the rain, one removed the mats from the playground to check if the windows in the corridors are closed. 3 salt, tape, towels, at for B, return it. He pinned a calendar with a forecast with a paperclip. The next morning, someone carefully circled the nearest rains with a green marker. At the clinic, Talia and I wrapped up our project with a cheat sheet. We translated it into Spanish, added a QR code with a letter template and wrote it step by step. In the subject, the address of the apartment. In the building, the dates. The photo. In the appendix, there is a checklist in the margins, where to tick the boxes. I pulled a simple Figma layout from my work and printed it out in stacks. At the reception, a man came up, squeezed the paper with 2 fingers and said, "Gracias por hacerlo fácil." The word easy is worth a lot here. We started to stay 5 minutes after our shift at the Unisphere, a meeting point from where both metro lines are convenient. One day, Talia brought a small box of paper clips in the shape of houses and put them in my palm, so as not to staple people together with a stapler. I laughed so hard that the guards looked to see if anything had happened, and wrote in my notes, "Leaving a gap is also a concern." Nora sometimes appeared on the phone as a push from a different time zone. I sent a story with a street action for the safety of crossings. They're slowed down. "We live here" is now on the banner, and children are drawing a turtle regulator with chalk. In response, I sent a close-up photo of our door closer, a spring end to self-tapping screws. Sign works. She put up a heart and a sticker with a wrench. And that was the end of the conversation. That's right. Meanwhile, a small crisis was brewing in the house. 2 residents kept an e-bike with left batteries in the hallway, and the neighbor from the second was afraid of a fire. I found flyers on the FDNY website about lithium battery fires, translated short abstracts, printed out bilingual memos, and threw a scooter and other Nibots under the doors of those who had a scooter and other Nibots on their Wi-Fi network profiles. At the residents' meeting, we calmly said that there was no place for batteries in the corridors, and that I would help find inexpensive metal boxes with certification for storage inside apartments. No scandals, just a rule and a link. That evening, one of the racers brought his own battery to show the markings. We read it together. There is a certification. We made each other laugh. New York, where you learn to read UL standards in the evenings. But we sleep better. Super. By the way, his name is Miguel. I finally stopped calling him just Super. He and I did a mini audit, and the list of micro-movements included door brushes at the draft entrance no longer pulling like in the subway, and dampers on the lid of the trash can in the yard stopped flapping from the wind. The woman from the 3rd floor brought cookies again, for silence too. I took a photo of our little upgrade and sent it to the chat at home with the caption, "I'm not applying screenshots, the sound is here." The work has also shifted. I carefully pitched the idea of a quiet mode to the team on Slack, automatic do not disturb, after 8 and on weekends. We made a pilot for a month. It turned out that no one died, and the task stopped burning exactly at the word level. It's amazing how much noise there was for the sake of noise. Talia and I got out to Jackson Heights. We took arepas from the Dominicans, tacos al pastor from the Mexicans, and Manchurians from the Indians at the same intersection, the Gastronomican. We sat on the steps outside the school, listened to the 7 strumming over Roosevelt, and talked about where it was easier for both of us, where it was in place. She told about her grandmother in Corona, who always kept a ready phrase for unsolicited calls. "Please write on paper." We both realized that this was a paperclip instead of a stapler. I suggested including this phrase in our cheat sheet, with an empty line for the language. In the fall, the HPD finally came according to our requests for heat. An inspector with a tablet, wearing a sweater under his uniform, looked at the thermometer, wrote down the temperature, it's below normal, took a picture of the steam batteries, and asked to see the call log. My laminated where to call came in handy here. The inspector nodded. "It's faster this way." A week later, Miguel replaced one of the old air plugs, and the roar of the batteries became like a distant train, not a drum part. I found myself starting to get out of the habit of waking up to clapping. In November, my teacher and I designed a tool shelf near the laundry room, a plastic box with screwdrivers, hexagons, a WD-40 and a refillable pack of paper clips, markers and masking tape. I pasted a sheet on top. "Take it, give it back. If you broke it, write it down." It's not a museum, but it works. Soon a new item appeared, a normal bicycle pump. Signed, "Thank you, 1D. A small economic utopia with 12 apartments. I remembered the borough exactly as much as one remembers an old favorite street. It was pleasant, without the desire to turn there every day. Sometimes she sent a photo of the sky after the rain, or a sign on a pole. Yield to people. Our language is still short, but not necessary. Sometimes I found myself with the phone in my hand, but no longer in the waiting mode, but recognized and released. December brought its own set of simple tasks. Replace the filter in the cleaner. Sort through the first aid kit. Expiration dates are still a quest. Add a column to the regional newspaper about winter boring victories. Door closer, door brushes, salted for B. Do not store batteries in the hallway. Cheat sheets for landlords. The editor put the headline, "How to make the house quieter and not quarrel." I blushed again. but I let it go. In the margins of the newspaper, he added in pencil, "Paperclip greater than stapler." Just before Christmas, Talia and I had our first off-duty evening at home. She brought a can of salsa and a funny wooden spoon, and I made soup minestrone, as proven diplomacy. We were silent for 10 minutes, then we discussed how best to write a polite reminder to the landlord without threats. We argued about warm and cold lights and eventually bought another dimmer for the kitchen. When she left, she paused in the doorway and ran her finger along the door closer body. "I love things that just do their job," I said. "Me too," and caught myself smiling stupidly in the empty hallway. The new year started with the fact that a neighbor teenager from 1D, the one with the pump, asked for help writing a letter to the school to make a ramp at the entrance. My sister has a wheelchair, and every day her parents drag her up the stairs. We walked with him, measured the height, photographed a slope, attached a link to the ADA guide to the letter, and signed the letter from 5 apartments at once. I sent it to Doan 311 and attached our own checklist. 2 weeks later, the answer came to work, and a month later, a simple but honest ramp appeared at the entrance. Debo brought me a chocolate bar and said, "Now I can roll." It was better than any approved in the letter. By February, I realized that my plots were always similar now. Notice dash type dash screw dash explain dash left a paper clip left. And this, surprisingly, brings what I have been looking for years, the feeling that I am inside the urban fabric and not a spectator from the outside. Talia and I hold on to this fabric carefully, sometimes together, sometimes on their own shifts. We rarely write long messages to each other. Mostly, "Are you there? Do you need paper clips? Soup on Sunday?" And this seems to be the pace at which I don't lose my thread. I recently received a postcard without a return. For sold, a shelf and a quiet door. 2A, 5C. I put it on the shelf by the entrance next to a jar of paper clips. I checked the dimmer and clicked exactly where the lamp does not screen. The cat jumped on the windowsill. In the hallway, someone was dragging a Christmas tree to be thrown away, and the door closer closed the door softly behind him, as promised. I turned off the phone, sat down on the edge of the carpet and said almost in a whisper, not for the sake of the theater, but to hear for myself, "I'm here. I'm needed." And tomorrow, the clinic, the green line of the 7, maybe another door closer somewhere in another house. The third version of our cheat sheet, with a paper clip instead of a stapler in the title and "Stand clear of the closing doors, please." And yes, maybe a movie with a waistline at the Kaufman in Astoria. No promises of forever, but very timely. The Kaufman movie turned out to be exactly what it needed to be. Neither a masterpiece nor a dummy, just a story that closes the door well. After the credits, Talia and I went out into the cold, bought a paper cup of tea, and she suddenly said, "I'm going back to the clinic today. We have a night reception for the homeless. The cold is stinging." I nodded, and there was a brief twinge inside, not jealousy, but the familiar say everyone reflex. I caught myself by the sleeve. "Not a stapler, paper clip. Do you want me to take you to the 7 and bring you thermos flasks?" I asked. "Take it, and we have thermos flasks," she smiled. "Keep your strength." We got to 46th Street, I kissed her on the temple and drove home, repeating to myself as a password, "Leaving a gap is also a concern." A day later, nor'easter appeared in the forecast. There's a familiar chorus in the chat at home. What's wrong with the basement? It's going to start flowing again. Has anyone seen the sand? I printed out my storm list in the new version, before the storm. 1. Remove the mats from the pads. 2. Check the windows on the stairs to 2-5 floor. 3. Lock the back door. Is the door closer checked? 4. Salt, tape, towels, lanterns, at for B. Return it. He added from below, responsible for floors 2 1D, 3, 3B, 4th, 5, 5C. I hung it by the elevator and duplicated it in Spanish. Miguel gave a thumbs up. In the evening, Talia called. "Grandma has cold batteries in the crown." The standard song is "We're working on it." She and I met at the station, got on a crowded bus like a rabbit, and 10 minutes later I was standing in front of my grandmother's door with a thermos flask, a pullover, and a laminated window gasket that I cut out of cardboard as I walked. "Califaxon," said Grandma, touching the battery with her palm like a sore knee. "I'll upload the complaint to HPD today," I replied, and took out my cheat sheet. "And we'll print it out to them in the house chat." At the same time, Talia called the neighbors. There is a warm zone in the church hall on 37th. You can warm up. TN blankets. The two of us posted a bilingual sign on the entrance door. Heat. Warming center. 0.4 miles. Open until 22 o'clock, with an arrow and a QR code that led to the map. Two neighbors came to Grandma's house. An old man with a cane and a woman with a girl in pajamas under her jacket. I've collected everyone's addresses and phone numbers just in case. The girl asked why I had a bunch of paper clips in my pocket. I said, so as not to staple people together. And she snorted in such an adult way that Grandma laughed for the first time that evening. At night, I got a la rain-in-law from Nora. A video of how their yard was flooded up to their ankles. I set up a heart, sent a snowflake from a set of stickers, and turned the phone face down. Warm and enough. The storm got out. In our house, the stairs are dry. The basement has survived. Only the door closer on the back door has asked for a WD-40. I took a drip in the morning, checked the closure and unsubscribed to the chat. It's working. The woman from the third floor brought cookies again. Sign. For silence 3. Miguel and I started joking that it was time to make cookies in a separate line of the budget. Following the storm, a domestic inflammatory process emerged. A neighbor on the 5th floor tore down all the leaflets from the entrance. Trash. I knocked. It was opened by a skinny pensioner in a perfect sweater. I know it's annoying when everything is plastered. I said, let's make a deal. One board, right corner, all with the date of withdrawal. I rent old clothes on Sundays. Okay? He looked at me with a hard look. I've been living in this house longer than you've been walking. Not an and said. And no ads about private services. Just security and a home. Agreed. I said, and handed over the marker. Will you put your signature quality control? In the evening, a new small cork board making the house quieter was hung. The first sheet is the storm list. Remove 15.03. The second is do not store batteries in the hallway. Why? The third is the warm zone in the area. Map. At the bottom is the thank you section. Postcards from 2A, 5C, someone's children's or turn 3 because I found it. The pensioner carefully wrote out verify. L. 5A. Talia and I had our first rough conversation. On Saturday, I suggested let's have a movie. Dumplings. Do nothing. And she had an appointment for a part-time job. Night vaccination. I caught a familiar lump in me. I want you, but you have a job. I was about to start the inner rostrum, but I stopped and wrote 3 lines to her, just like in our cheat sheets. How I feel. I miss you. What I want. Time together. What can I offer? Tomorrow is breakfast 10 silence. She replied 5 minutes later. I see everything. Yes. 10 cakes and silence tomorrow. We really didn't talk much in the morning. I fried pancakes. She looked out the window, then went to sleep for 3 hours, and I quietly oiled the door hinges in the kitchen. Living together is sometimes greasing loops instead of declarations. The cat, by the way, chose us officially. The neighbor from to see finally gave up. He lives with you anyway. Let's get it done. Talia and I took her. The cat turned out to be she. It turned out only in the office to an inexpensive clinic, vaccinated, and chose a name. Talia pronounced mint as if the sound had been on her tongue for a long time. We bought a scratching post, and for the first time in the apartment, something started scratching louder than steam batteries. At work, our quiet mode in Slack was fixed by policy. I wrote a short internal guide, how to write when you don't have to write, with examples of paperclip phrases. I'll come back to this tomorrow. I see I'm taking it to work in the morning. Can I reschedule this? I printed it out on one page and hung it next to the coffee. Someone had attached a paperclip to the title. In the spring, a teenager from 1D brought the news. The headmaster invited us to a small opening of the ramp. It won't have ribbons, he said, but it will have donuts. The 3 of us came. Him, me, and his sister in a wheelchair. The ramp turned out to be simple, with uneven stripes, but correct. My sister took a ride by herself, and my brother whispered, now I'm not asking Dad. This type of happiness, after which you don't want to argue all day on the internet. At the clinic, Talia and I launched a non-threatening letter, a template for tenants, where it is clear, polite and to the point. The first results came quickly. The landlord from the neighboring house replaced the entrance lock in 3 days, not because we pressed, but because the letter was clear. I added another mini line, the end. Thank you for doing it. Let me know when. It turned out to be stronger than hinting at fines. Once a week, Talia and I started leaving each other little things. She's the second set of brushes and paste in my glass. I put them on the right. There was actually a hexagon there, but the hexagon moved. I am the key to the apartment on a large paper clip. I put it in her palm. It's just a paper clip. Not a stapler. Perfect, she said, and hung it on the subway ring. Sometimes, of course, I still snap at do it right away. Last Friday, I saw a complaint about the nose from the trash can in the chat, and 3 minutes later I was writing Miguel a long message with points and links. He stopped. Erased it. I called Miguel. He said without pathos, "Tomorrow at 10 o'clock I will screw on the damper. Will you come hold it?" Come. I held it. 10 minutes. The tank stopped clapping. A woman from the 3rd floor brought cookies. For silence for. And another quiet victory. Pensioner L. from 5A, who tore down the ads, brought a piece of paper himself. Asked me to call the control room if the elevator is stuck. I can do it. He carefully wrote down the number and some of the days, hours, when he was at home. He and I smiled the same tired smiles of people who have seen too much stupid paper and for some reason appreciate the right one. Sometimes Nora sends photos of the yield to people road sign. Sometimes I give her a photo of the door closer. We both seem to be on our way. In the evening, I hang Mint's new toe on the door with a paper clip, flip the dimmer to softly, put the thank you, 2A, 5C postcard on the shelf at the entrance and think a simple thought. I'm inside what I'm doing. Not an observer, not a rescuer, thermometer, door closer, paperclip, ramp, soup on Sunday. Do not store batteries in the hallway. Thank you for doing that. Talia sends, I'm at grandma's, I'll be back at 20 to 10. And I write, the soup is warm, the light is soft, Mint is in Nambosh. A timer clicks in the kitchen, snow creaks outside, and a door closes softly in the entryway. And I feel good that this story always has a following point. Tomorrow is the silence board. Update the withdrawal dates. Call the director about the second ramp at the back entrance. Pick up a dimmer for grandma's kitchen. Ask Miguel for another door brush. And a movie on Sunday. Without forever. Just in time.